Welcome to the Geek Cabal channel. Today we're going to be talking about the book Strong Towns by Charles L. Moran Jr. Welcome to the Geek Cabal channel. My name is Bob, and today we're going to be doing a book review, and this is going to be a little bit off the beaten path. I normally do BattleTech books, and uh, actually I think all my Dragonlance books, they've all been sci-fi fantasy books. This is a real-world topic book. I do also read real books. And I've been meaning to talk about them here on the channel more. Now, this book, Strong Towns, I came across this book from their YouTube channel. It might have been someone else's YouTube channel talking about it, but I know this gentleman has a channel, and I believe it is called Strong Towns. I will try to find it, put a link in the description. There will also be a link in the description, an Amazon affiliate link to purchase the book if you like what you hear by the end of this. If not, don't. Don't waste your money if you don't think it sounds good. Now, I personally kind of find urban planning fascinating. I love the SimCity games, and I know real life doesn't work that way, but the concept. I love city building games. I like games like Command and Conquer, where you have to build a base. Building things. I find the building and the planning, fitting form to function and things like that. I find it all very fascinating. And I started watching videos talking about how in the United States and I believe Canada, I think we're the only two countries to really go down this road, have basically taken a wrong turn in urban development. At least this gentleman, and there's some other channels that make similar arguments, think so. And the basic gist of the idea is that for millennia, people built cities one particular way. It's an overarching kind of general way, and then in the 50s we decided, hey, let's try suburbs and just chuck all that nonsense we've learned over thousands of years out the window. And it's probably going to end up being a very large mistake. So, the basic idea is that throughout human history, we learned a long time ago that city building is a trial and error type situation. And in a trial and error type situation, you don't make giant gambles because you know there's a fair chance of failure and you will waste time, money, resources, etc., etc. So you make small gambles. And you see this in the way cities are built. A city starts, and as it flourishes, the buildings in the core of the city where the action is, they go up, and the city itself starts going out. Once the city core reaches a certain height, then you go out to like another ring, and those buildings are shorter. And then you go out another ring, and then those buildings are shorter, and eventually get to single level buildings at the outskirts. And that's where the trial and error is occurring. Is the city going to keep growing? Then it'll keep expanding, and then the last batch of buildings in the last expansion zone will start going up because they're prospering now. And if they don't, then those buildings will just stop and maybe eventually be torn down. And so, but things were built in such a way that you could expand them, or that it would be easy to remove that building and build a larger building. And this process repeated over and over, and you see it in the American West, during the like the 1800s, where the railroad had come through, and every so often there'd be a town built. Well, you'd have your town center, like you see in Western films, where you've got a bunch of 2, maybe 3-story buildings. They have a saloon or a store of some kind on the first floor, and then housing on the second, if there's a third, on the third floor. And that's the way you would do it. And then if the town prospered, the town would expand out, and that main street would grow up. And if it didn't, then people would pack up and leave. And they would only be out what it took to build that. So then all of a sudden we decided, hey, suburbs. And we decided that instead we'd make areas that we only allowed single family housing, where all the houses looked fairly similar. They were all built at the same time, which means they're all going to fall apart at the same time, by the way. And we didn't allow businesses there. We didn't allow multifamily units there. We didn't allow all the things that actually drive prosperity for a city there. It's only houses, and the tax base is abysmal compared to the downtown where those people actually probably go and work. So in the downtown, you've got your buildings that have businesses and whatnot on the lower floors, and then on upper floors you have housing, or it's a giant office building for a major corporation or something. So you have all these things that we should know how they work, and so our cities initially, like if you look at New York, you've got your tall buildings and you're in like Manhattan, and it kind of works its way down. There's mid-level buildings, then smaller buildings, then finally up to single-level housing. But more modern cities that were built after that, because New York was built a while ago for the most part. Some of our other cities, like you got your high-level buildings, and then there's no mid-level. It just drops off to first, 1 and 2 level buildings. Occasional little office parks here and there. But that's about it, and that's not working, because the larger buildings have a larger impact on the taxes. They generate a far larger amount of taxes in a more compact area. Now, this book, I will tell you, does kind of sound like they're arguing that we should live on top of each other like ants or something. But they're not. They're not saying get rid of housing. They're just saying that quit spreading out to suburbia, quit going out, go up, because similar sets of utilities can manage if you just go up. But if you keep going out, you have to keep extending the utility lines. And the tax base at the extension does not cover that. Plus, you run into the other major problem. All those people in the suburbs have to get to the downtown area. And thanks to the machinations of various groups, most cities have atrocious mass transit systems, or none at all. So you hit the cycle of, okay, it takes forever to drive downtown. Let's add more lanes to the highway to accommodate more traffic so it can move faster. They do that. Traffic starts moving faster. But because we're doing this on roads that were not meant to be highways to begin with, and we're just city streets and are now roads, or as the book calls them, stroads, the worst possible combinations of streets and roads. They you have to keep expanding. Well, then it interacts with all the side roads and the foot traffic and everything else, so accidents increase. Well, once accidents increase, then the city's like, well, we got to stop all these accidents. Let's put more stop signs and stoplights in, which then slows down traffic, which then leads to needing more lanes, which then causes more stoplights and stop signs. It's just a never-ending cycle. Plus, you have to have parking for all these cars downtown. So you start to turn lots that could have a building that could generate tons of tax revenue, employ people and businesses, to a parking garage, which, yeah, makes some money, but you shouldn't have to have every other building downtown be a parking garage. Okay? We need to rethink mass transit so it actually works. Buses and trains and whatnot, and make it so that people don't need to drive as far because they're living 50 miles away in the suburb. And then you got to cover all those roads too. Well, that's more expense that you're not generating enough taxes for in the suburbs to take care of. So it's a ticking time bomb, at least from what this gentleman presents. And yeah, it's not going to be good when it starts going off. So we need to start now. Like, you can't just abandon the suburbs, probably. So they need to start getting rid of the zoning that makes it so it's single occupancy housing, and allow at least small businesses and probably multi occupancy buildings to move in. and that will increase the tax base, which will start to help pay for these things. Because right now they're mainly paying for it with money from the federal government, who is paying to keep expanding the cities. So, at least as I understood it. Uh, but yeah, you run into these problems, and it just makes it so it's near impossible to walk anywhere. So you're penalized for not owning a car, and even if you could walk, nothing's within walking distance. But where you have to walk, it's incredibly dangerous because the roads have priority over sidewalks and everything else. So we've just become some cities have become this situation where, it's dangerous to try to walk anywhere, and there's no place to walk to. So anyway, there's a lot more to the book. The last couple chapters do get a little philosophical on how this has impacted people's personal lives, and uh, where things like faith and community kind of come into the equation. And just to be clear, the gentleman doesn't preach there. He just talks about his own experience and some of the things he believes and how it's kind of shaped his life. And I thought it was going to go one way, and it didn't. And then, I thought it was ultimately well written, well done. You know, touching little personal notes there. But the book lays it out pretty clearly as far as tax revenues, land values, things like this, and how the math just does not work to keep expanding like we are in some of these cities. So if you're having any kind of interest in all of this, definitely worth checking out. Like I said, the book is Strong Towns by Charles L. Moran Jr. And like I said, I believe he has a channel here on YouTube. If he does, I'll find it, put a link to it. If it has sounded good, consider buying a copy. Link to that down below as well. And again, that's an affiliate link there to Amazon. But other than that, like, share, subscribe, comment. Do you want to hear about other books that are not science fiction and fantasy type books? More kind of real world stuff like this. And if the answer to that question is yes, just to be clear, I do read political books. I will not be talking about them on here because I try to steer clear of politics as much as possible on this channel, and I do not want to get mired down in debates on that. If I want that, I will tune into the news and depress myself. So anyway, thank you folks for watching. Let me know what you think. I already did the like, share, subscribe stuff. But yep, anyway, I will see you folks out there in the stacks, I guess.